Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's class. So in this video, I am going to review last week's homework from the Civil War and Industrialization chapter in your book. And I am also just going to give you a quick overview of what this week's assignment is on Google Classroom. So I'm hoping that you are watching this video first before you watch the video explaining about the progressive era, industrialization, World War I, etc. So first, we're going to go over the homework. So everybody, if you have your book out, please turn to page 73. I'm not going to go over page 72 with you because that is the vocabulary fill in the blank that you could easily find in the definitions in the back of the book. Well, in the back of the chapter, I'm sorry, on page 94, I believe it starts. Yep, 94. And if you needed to find those exact answers, you could find them on page 92 under lesson. So they're right back there in the book for you. So I'm going to get started on going over question number 9 on 73. What was the most important factor in the start of the Civil War? C, disagreements over the expansion of slavery. Yes, so basically remember from last week that the 7 southern states decided to leave the Union because they knew that when Abraham Lincoln became president that the political powers to end slavery had tipped against them, and that if they didn't leave the Union, they would have to give up their slave labor because a Republican president like Abraham Lincoln would force the government to abolish slavery in all of the states in the United States at that time. So they left the Union. President Abraham Lincoln did not want to let the Union break up, so he started the Civil War to bring the Union back together. And yes, it did end with the abolishment of slavery once the South surrendered. Number 10, which of these states was admitted to the United States as a result of the Missouri Compromise? Maine was admitted to the state, so the answer is A. As the Missouri Compromise, it was admitted to the state to the United States as the free state in that compromise. All right, number 11, which of these is an example of manifest destiny? D, the United States annexed Texas, meaning that the United States added Texas to the Union. Basically, the term of manifest destiny is that it was the colonists, it was the United States citizens' destiny calling their God-given right to expand west. Okay, so that's what they called expansion out to the west, was their manifest destiny. That it was their manifest destiny to go out west, find farmland, and do whatever they wanted to do to it in order to survive. Number 12, what was the main problem of Reconstruction? C, it did not give freed slaves lasting rights. It didn't. Reconstruction era lasted for 10 years. They sent northern politicians and government legislators down to the South to make sure that the former slaves were free, that they were not put back into slavery, that they were able to go to school, that they were able to work, that they were able to do things that the average man should be able to do. However, even though people were sent down to do this, the legislators in the South still made it their goal to make the life of African Americans as miserable as possible. When a new president took over after 10 years of Reconstruction, he decided to pull out all of the government officials, the legislators, the troops that were down there basically enforcing the law, and said that the Reconstruction period was over and that the South could figure it out on their own. And the South basically just went back to the way it wanted to be, with oppressing the African Americans and not letting them own land and not letting them own houses. And that's where we have this idea of indentured servitude, that if you sign this contract and work the land for 10 years, the land becomes yours. But in most cases, those contracts were flawed, or they were ripped up and thrown out. They were burned in the fireplace. And, oh, we never had a contract. You're still a slave. Oh, you don't want to be a slave? Get out of the house. You don't own that house. So, yeah, I mean, the Reconstruction period was an attempt by the government to give them long-lasting rights, even though the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was passed. 13th Amendment, freeing the slaves. 14th Amendment, granting citizenship to all former slaves. And 15th Amendment, giving them the right to vote, African-American men only. The people in the South didn't really follow those laws. And then once Reconstruction was over, there was nobody to enforce it on them. So they just did what they wanted. Number 13, most immigrants to the United States in the late 1800s found work in urban factories. So yeah, a lot of factory workers were immigrants because they could be exploited, meaning they could be taken advantage of because they didn't speak much English and they had no choice but to go to work, or they wouldn't be able to survive in a new country, and they didn't know much better. So they, went to these factories and were really taken advantage of in order to feed their families and keep a roof over their head. All right, on the next 2 pages, 74 and 75, it's another kind of cartoon or an illustration. I want to go over this together. So because sometimes on the GED you will have images like this, and it is important to be able to pick out details of the image just by reading the paragraph, just by knowing the time period, and just by looking at it. So I want to go over this together next Monday. I wrote it down for me to remember to go over this with you. However, if I forget, I know somebody will remind me. So now I am going to show you. So another thing, have it completed. Okay, make sure you do 14 to 17 on those 2 pages so we have a good discussion to talk about. Okay, I want to know what your thoughts are on the image, and I want to tell you, thoughts that the GED test would basically expect you to have. All right, so your assignment for this week. So this is going to be this should be posted as of 9 a.m. today. Well, not today because today's Friday, but Monday. So please let me know if you have any questions about this. Your first thing to do is bookwork in your orange high set. It's the 20th century, page 76 to 81. Now, please understand that this book, for some reason, puts 60 years of history in one chapter in 10 paragraphs. That's why I do notes. That's why your next video is so long, because there's so much more information. Like on page 76, if you still have your book open, you can see that World War I and World War II are talked about in 2 paragraphs. This book literally doesn't even mention the Holocaust, which happened during World War II, which is very, very important. What you're going to see today in my video is World War I, Great Depression, and New Deal. This also talks about the Cold War and the Civil Rights Movement. So you can read all of this. You can answer the questions. We'll go over them next week. But we're going to basically, after this week, not touch the book probably ever again because there's just so much information that it leaves out. So please complete that. You're currently watching the homework review video. Maybe I should put that as number 1. Yeah, I'm going to put that as number 1. So this will look a little different. And then you will watch this week's video. As you watch this video, write down any questions you want to ask. When you are finished, see number 3 questions if you have any questions you want answered. This video is 54 minutes long, but you can pause it and resume as many times as you need. It's on YouTube, so watch the video here at this link. Actually, you're going to see number 4 questions. All right, and then number 4 questions via Google Forms below. Do you have any questions from today's lesson? Ask them below and I will answer them in our next class. If you do not have any questions, you do not have to fill out this form. So basically what I'm asking you to do is if you have questions, answer them in this Google Forms document right here that says questions. And then when we start next week's live video, I will be sure to, I'm going to write those questions down and I'm going to give you the answers for them before we start on our next lesson. And finally, I put some YouTube videos via Crash Course on here. You do not have to watch all these videos. They're optional for additional information. You're going to get a lot of information just from my notes that I give you in that 54-minute video. If you want to watch these, I'm not going to tell you not to. One important one that you may want to watch is the Great Depression, because I do talk about the Great Depression, but there's just so much more that went along with it. So watching the Great Depression would be interesting to start or to watch, and how World War I started would be an interesting one to watch, just because really World War I wasn't the United States fight, but they ended up having to get into it because they kept sinking our ships, which is an act of war. So there we go. All right, and then number 6 is your homework answers from last week, basically. So this is that document to show you your homework answers, the one that I showed you here. So if you need to look back at that, it's added there on the classroom. All right, good luck. Let me know if you have any questions about the technology. I don't see you having any issues because it's YouTube. You can't watch it on your computer. Maybe you can watch it on your phone. You should be good. But if you have any questions that you need answered right away, send me a text, and I think we're going to be hiking to a waterfall today. So I'll get back to you when I can. Thank you guys. Have a great day.